Welcome to Cheat Sheet Tales, where secrets slip, lies unravel, and the truth always has a twist. Real stories, raw confessions, and shocking betrayals. Drop a comment if you've ever caught a red flag too late. Now let's get into today's tale. Have you ever given everything you had only to realize that the people you've been trying to help never truly saw you? Imagine working tirelessly, sacrificing your dreams, and building a life from scratch, only for your family to notice when it's too late. This is the story of Jessica, a woman who spent years in the shadows, underestimated by everyone, even those she loved the most. But sometimes the hardest moments lead to the strongest decisions. What happens when a family that has never truly seen you finally realizes your worth? And what if, instead of welcoming you with open arms, they demand even more? Jessica's journey is about overcoming emotional neglect, standing up for yourself when no one else will, and choosing to walk away from the very people who should have had your back. But it all came crashing down on one Thanksgiving. Let me take you back to the small lakeside town in Minnesota where Jessica grew up. It was a place where everyone knew everyone, and life seemed simple. As a little girl, Jessica had a loving family, a hardworking father who taught high school physics, and a mother who worked long hours as a nurse. They weren't rich, but they weren't poor either. For a time, Jessica believed she had it all. Her dad would take her fishing every weekend, and on summer evenings, the three of them would sit on the porch, eating ice cream and listening to the crickets in the calm, warm air. It was the kind of love that every child dreams of, constant, unconditional, and safe. But that was before Lily came into the picture. It all changed one freezing January night, right after Jessica turned 8. Her aunt, pale-faced, rushed into their house and told Jessica to grab a coat. Her baby sister had been born 2 months early and was in critical condition. That night, the warmth in Jessica's world turned cold. For months, the only attention her parents gave her was when they sent her to her grandmother's house. Lily was the center of everything now, and Jessica? Well, she was just expected to quietly step aside. Jessica tried everything: school achievements, trophies, even perfect SAT scores, to get her family to notice her. But it was always Lily who was praised, Lily who got the attention, and Lily who was seen as the special one. She wasn't the precious baby, but she became the forgotten one. And so Jessica did what many children in her shoes do. She learned how to be invisible. She withdrew into her room, into her own world of art, history, and antiques. But deep down, something was brewing. Little did anyone know, Jessica was quietly building something for herself, a future where she would finally be seen. This is the story of how one woman's journey, from being the overlooked daughter to becoming a woman who would no longer be ignored, unfolded. And how at one moment, everything changed. Growing up in a small lakeside town in Minnesota, Jessica's childhood seemed to have all the makings of a perfect life. It wasn't a life filled with luxury, but it was one filled with love, warmth, and consistency. Jessica's father, a high school physics teacher, would take her fishing every weekend while her mother worked night shifts as a nurse at the county hospital. They weren't rich, but they had everything they needed. And to Jessica, it seemed like they had a happy family. A family where she was loved, supported, and cared for. There was something magical about those summer evenings, sitting on the porch, with her parents, enjoying ice cream and the peaceful sounds of the night. The world felt like a safe place, one where Jessica's life was just beginning to unfold. In those moments, she believed that this simple, warm love was what every child was meant to have. This was her sense of security. But things changed when a new life entered the picture. On one freezing January night, when Jessica was 8 years old, everything she knew would shift. She was woken up by urgent knocking at the door. Her Aunt Evelyn's pale face filled the doorway, and before Jessica could fully understand what was happening, she was told to grab a coat and a few things. "Your mom's at the hospital," her aunt said, her voice tight with worry. "Your baby sister has been born early. She needs special care." At that moment, Jessica didn't fully comprehend the magnitude of the situation, but what she did know was this: nothing would ever be the same again. When little Lily arrived, everything changed. Suddenly, Jessica wasn't the center of attention anymore. Lily's fragile life became the sole focus of the family, and Jessica was gently, but firmly, pushed aside. She learned that her role in the family would no longer be the same. Her achievements, her school projects, her little victories, they were all quietly dismissed, overshadowed by the constant care Lily required. This shift wasn't something that happened overnight. At first, Jessica tried everything to regain her parents' attention. She brought home perfect grades, showed off her accomplishments, and even went out of her way to help around the house. But every time, her mother's focus was on Lily. "Lily's sick," or "Lily needs rest" became the usual responses. Her father would nod and say, "That's good, honey." But the smiles, the encouragement, the affection, all of it was saved for Lily. This is where Jessica began to learn the first hard lesson: the cost of invisibility. As the years passed, Jessica grew accustomed to being overlooked. The constant cycle of trying to win her parents' approval became a routine she no longer questioned. Until one day, she realized that it wasn't about the awards or the achievements at all. It was about something deeper. She was caught in an emotional web of unmet needs, but instead of rebelling against it, she quietly accepted her place in the shadows. It wasn't that Jessica didn't try to stand out. She did everything in her power to get noticed. Good grades, first-place awards, and even offering to help around the house. But each effort was brushed aside. When she brought home her first perfect score on a math test, she thought her mom would pin it to the fridge like she used to. But instead, her mother glanced at it and muttered, "Lily's feeling a bit sick. I need to check on her." Jessica's heart sank. That one moment, when her small victory was ignored, marked the beginning of her silent survival. She no longer expected praise or recognition. Slowly, without even realizing it, she started retreating into herself, quietly accepting the fact that no matter what she did, it wouldn't be enough to make her parents look at her the way they looked at Lily. This happens in many families where one child may need more attention due to special circumstances, whether it's health issues, academic struggles, or emotional challenges. While the intention is often to provide the necessary care for that child, it can leave others feeling invisible and neglected. Jessica wasn't the only one in this position. Countless siblings in similar situations go unnoticed, their needs and accomplishments brushed aside for the sake of someone else. In Jessica's case, her survival mechanism was clear: stay silent, stay invisible, and just keep going. She withdrew from the family dynamics and found solace in her own world. The more she faded into the background, the more her parents focused solely on Lily. Jessica stopped fighting for attention and began to quietly exist in her own space. But this silence wasn't without consequences. It taught her a hard truth about herself. She had become so used to not being seen that she started to doubt her own worth. The constant comparison to Lily, with all of her special needs and accolades, made Jessica feel less important, less significant. Her existence was no longer marked by her own achievements. It was marked by her invisibility. By the time Jessica reached 8th grade, she had mastered the art of being invisible. But deep down, something inside her refused to stay silent forever. One day, while walking through her small town, she spotted a "Help Wanted" sign in the window of a local bakery called Sugar Pines. Without thinking twice, she walked in, filled out the application, and began working after school. At just 13, Jessica was the youngest worker in the bakery, tasked with mopping floors, wiping tables, and serving pastries. But to her, it felt like freedom. The bakery wasn't just a job. It was an escape. From her home, from the constant focus on Lily, and from the unspoken rule that Jessica didn't need anything, least of all attention or praise. Every evening after school, Jessica tied her hair up, put on her apron, and got to work. The owner, Mrs. Lorraine, never asked Jessica why a young girl wanted to spend her after-school hours working in a bakery. She just gave Jessica a warm smile, put a hand on her shoulder, and said, "If you work hard, you deserve a place in the world." In those moments, Jessica learned something invaluable. Hard work and self-reliance could provide a sense of worth that her family never gave her. Unlike at home, where her achievements were overshadowed by Lily's needs, here she was seen for her efforts. Mrs. Lorraine never judged Jessica for her quiet nature or ignored her accomplishments. Instead, she respected her work ethic and valued her for the person she was. Many young people, especially those in challenging family situations, turn to part-time work not just for money, but for the independence it offers. It becomes their way of carving out their own space in a world that might otherwise ignore them. Jessica's story is a reflection of this reality. By working hard, she found not only financial independence but emotional empowerment. For Jessica, this job wasn't just about earning money. It was about gaining something far more valuable, a sense of control over her own life. It was her way of saying, "I am worthy. I am capable." This part of Jessica's journey teaches us an important lesson. Sometimes independence isn't about being free from others. It's about being free from the expectations others have placed on you. It's about choosing to work toward your own dreams, not the dreams others have for you. As Jessica grew older, she knew that the life she wanted wouldn't be handed to her. She had to carve it out herself, step by step. After high school, she applied to 12 colleges without telling her parents. She had already learned that if she wanted to succeed, she would have to do it quietly, without the fanfare and validation that others might expect. She didn't ask for help. Instead, she wrote her own essays, filled out her own forms, and secured her own scholarship. Every letter of recommendation was carefully arranged by herself. Every financial aid form completed with quiet determination. Her parents never asked about her college plans. They were too absorbed in Lily's latest drama, another school switch, another change in direction. And so, Jessica kept her dream to herself. Not because she wanted to hide it, but because she had learned not to expect anyone to be proud of her. When she was accepted to Northwestern University with a full scholarship, she couldn't wait to share the news. But even when she showed her parents the acceptance letter, the response was tepid at best. "That's nice, sweetie, but don't tell Lily. She's a bit stressed." This was the moment that cemented Jessica's understanding. No matter what she did, she would always be second to Lily in their eyes. So, while her peers celebrated their college acceptance with their families, Jessica quietly celebrated alone, in the comfort of her own small victory. This is a reality for many young adults, particularly those who grow up in families where the attention is diverted elsewhere. Whether it's toward a sibling with special needs or a parent's emotional struggle, they often have to build their future alone, relying on their own strength and resilience. Jessica's experience is a reminder of how many kids do not receive the encouragement they deserve simply because they aren't at the center of the family's focus. Yet they persevere, and in doing so, they learn the invaluable lesson of self-reliance. Jessica didn't expect her family to celebrate her success, but she knew she had done something remarkable. Her acceptance to a prestigious school on a full scholarship was proof of her capability, even if no one acknowledged it. It wasn't about proving something to her parents. It was about proving it to herself. After Jessica graduated from Northwestern, she didn't follow the usual path that most of her peers did. While they rushed into corporate jobs, eager to climb the ladder of success, Jessica was quietly carving her own niche. She had always been drawn to the world of antiques, specifically antique jewelry. There was something about the history behind each piece, the craftsmanship, and the stories they told that fascinated her. It was a world where every detail mattered, where her sharp eye could shine in ways that hadn't been recognized before. Her first internship at a small jewelry appraisal firm was unpaid, but Jessica didn't mind. She was used to working hard, without getting noticed. Every day, she meticulously researched pieces, learning everything there was to know about gemstones, historical periods, and the fine details that made a piece of jewelry valuable. As she handled rings, necklaces, and brooches that seemed insignificant to others, she saw something different, a hidden value that most people missed. Jessica's work didn't get much recognition at first, but then one day, she stumbled upon a brooch that had been misjudged. It had been listed as simple costume jewelry, but something about it caught her eye. She spent hours researching, tracking down its origins, and discovering it was a rare piece created by a French artisan for European nobility. It was worth far more than anyone had realized. She presented her findings to her supervisors, backing them up with detailed research. The brooch was reappraised at $12,000 and sold at auction for over $40,000. Jessica's name was mentioned in the firm's emails. Finally, her efforts were acknowledged. But not in the way she had hoped. She wasn't praised for the effort she had put in. Instead, the credit was given to the company as a whole. But Jessica wasn't deterred. She knew her worth. She saw potential in every misjudged piece of jewelry. And more importantly, she saw herself as someone capable of building something bigger than anyone had ever expected. Jessica's story isn't unique. Many people who work in fields where they're underappreciated, whether it's in creative industries or technical fields, often have to fight for their recognition. It's easy to overlook someone's quiet contributions when they don't demand attention. But like Jessica, these individuals often carry a quiet fire within them, waiting for the right opportunity to prove their worth in the workplace. People are often overlooked for their potential until they take the initiative to show what they're capable of. Jessica's story is a reminder that hard work, dedication, and a willingness to learn can lead to great success, even when the recognition doesn't come immediately. By the time Jessica had built her business to a respectable level, she had done so quietly. She wasn't interested in boasting or drawing attention to her success. In her mind, the work she was doing was enough. Her family, however, had no idea what she had achieved. They still saw her as the invisible daughter, the one who had silently faded into the background while Lily took center stage. Jessica's success remained her secret. She continued to send money to her parents, quietly covering their bills, especially as Lily's educational expenses grew with each passing year. At first, the transfers were small, $3,000 here, $5,000 there. But as time went on, Jessica's contributions grew larger, reaching $7,000 a month. She did it not because they deserved it, but because she could. She saw it as her way of helping, even though it often felt like her efforts were never truly acknowledged. But on one fateful Thanksgiving, everything changed. Jessica had never planned to host the dinner. She had been ready to skip the whole thing and spend the day in quiet solitude. But when her mom called, sounding more fragile than usual, asking if she could take care of things for the holiday, Jessica couldn't refuse. It was the first time in years that her family had asked her for anything that wasn't money or silent support. So she did what she always did. She stepped in. But this time, it would be different. Jessica went all out for Thanksgiving, hiring a high-end catering service from Chicago. The meal wasn't just food, it was a lavish, carefully crafted experience. The catering team arrived with portable ovens, silver trays, and even a professional tablescape designer. Everything was perfect, down to the last detail. It wasn't about impressing anyone. It was about providing herself with something she had never received from her family, a meal that was truly hers. As the meal unfolded, Jessica watched her family react with awe. Their eyes widened at the extravagant spread. Lily, of course, was the first to comment. "Isn't this a little much?" she whispered to her mom, clearly noticing how over-the-top everything seemed. But Jessica simply smiled, knowing that for the first time in years, she was doing something just for herself. However, the dinner wasn't over, and the quiet chaos had only just begun. Before we move forward, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what we've shared so far. How do you feel about Jessica's journey? Can you relate to the way she was overlooked by her own family? Or have you ever found yourself in a situation where your efforts went unnoticed? Drop a comment below and let us know what emotions this story is bringing up for you. Trust me, your thoughts are important, and we'll dive into some of the most powerful ones later in the video. Let's continue. It wasn't long after the Thanksgiving dinner that Jessica's carefully built world started to unravel in ways she hadn't anticipated. What she thought would be a quiet moment of acknowledgement turned into a dramatic revelation. The moment her sister, Lily, spotted the open laptop during dinner and saw the bank account balance Jessica had always kept hidden, everything changed. Lily, never one to miss a chance to impress her friends, took the opportunity to show everyone what she had just discovered. "Hey guys, look at this! This is what Jessica's been hiding," she said, spinning the screen around for the whole room to see. At first, there was silence. Shocked, Stunned silence. The numbers on the screen were impossible to ignore. $12.6 million. Jessica's success, her hard work, was finally exposed to the family who had never bothered to ask about her life. And in that silence, the wheels began to turn. It didn't take long before Jessica's mother broke the silence with a strained laugh, trying to brush off the awkwardness. "Oh, she's probably just helping someone with paperwork, right, sweetie?" But Jessica knew this wasn't just about money. It never had been. It was about something much deeper, the realization that her family, the very people she had sacrificed for all these years, had never really seen her for who she was. They had always seen her as an invisible daughter, a background character, in the story of Lily's life. And now, they weren't asking if she was okay. They weren't congratulating her for building something remarkable from nothing. Instead, they wanted to know why she hadn't shared it with them. And worse, they expected her to fund their lives. Her mother's voice broke through the room, full of shock and entitlement. "You've got all this money, and you didn't share it with us? You're the one who's been hiding it all along." Jessica's father, red-faced with frustration, leaned back in his chair. "No matter what you do, you're still a daughter of this family. Families share everything." And that's when it clicked. It wasn't about the money. It was about the years of neglect, the years of being dismissed, the years of silent suffering, while they took, and took. It was about how they had always relied on her, not because they truly saw her, but because they never had to. For the first time, Jessica spoke up, not with anger, but with clarity. "Family doesn't mean carrying. People who look down on you, I've been helping you for years, but that doesn't mean I owe you more." After Jessica made her stand at Thanksgiving, the fallout was inevitable. Her family, in shock and anger, couldn't understand why she had chosen this moment to reveal her wealth, and more importantly, why she had cut them off financially. The phone rang nonstop for days. Messages flooded her inbox. It was as though the very fabric of their family had unraveled, and they were desperate to stitch it back together. But this time, Jessica wasn't going to play the role they expected. Her mother's voice was a mix of desperation and guilt. "Why are you doing this? Don't you care about us? We need you. Your sister's struggling. Your father is doing his best, but we just can't manage without your help." And Lily's text came through too, bitter and broken. "You're being selfish. You've always been selfish. I deserve to know about this. I deserve to be part of it. Your life." Jessica sat in silence for a long time. She had already made her decision, but it wasn't just about cutting off financial support. It was about taking control of her life. For years, she had been the one who quietly endured, the one who gave without asking for anything in return, the one who stayed silent while her family took and took. Now, she was choosing herself. She was choosing to live without being used, without being expected to shoulder their burdens. Jessica knew that no matter how much money she sent, how many sacrifices she made, they would never truly see her. The truth was, her family wasn't asking for help out of love. They were asking out of convenience. They were used to relying on her, not because they truly cared about her, but because they never had to look at the cost of their actions. In life, many people find themselves in relationships where their generosity is taken for granted, especially with family. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that helping others is a duty. But in reality, sometimes our kindness is misunderstood as an obligation. It's important to recognize when you're being used and to stop enabling behaviors that drain your energy without any reciprocity. Setting boundaries, especially with family, is one of the hardest but most important steps in maintaining a healthy relationship with yourself. Jessica's choice to stop giving wasn't just a financial decision. It was a personal declaration that she would no longer allow herself to be a fallback option, a safety net for those who never took the time to appreciate her. In the weeks following her decision to cut off her family financially, Jessica settled into a new rhythm of life. The phone calls eventually stopped, and the endless text messages faded into silence. But for the first time in a long while, Jessica felt a sense of relief. It wasn't the relief of being rid of her family. It was the relief of knowing that she had finally chosen herself. She had no more obligations, no more guilt, no more constant expectations hanging over her head. Jessica threw herself even further into her work. Her business and Iris continued to grow at a pace she had only dreamed of before. Clients from across the country reached out for her expertise, and soon her reputation as an expert in antique jewelry was growing beyond what she could have imagined. More importantly, she was doing it all on her terms. No longer did she need to hide her success or make excuses for it. Her life, once defined by quiet sacrifice, was now one of purposeful independence. And then, one day, an invitation arrived. A renowned fashion designer wanted her to authenticate a vintage jewelry collection for an upcoming exhibition in New York. It was the kind of opportunity Jessica had always known she was capable of, but she had never allowed herself to pursue, because of the emotional weight of her family's expectations. Now, she was free to take it. The irony wasn't lost on her. Her family, the same people who had ignored her for so long, were the ones now missing out on the chance to be a part of her journey, and Jessica, finally standing in her truth, wasn't looking back. As she prepared for the New York exhibition, she thought about all the steps that had brought her here. She thought about how, as a little girl, she had always been pushed aside. How, as a young woman, she had worked quietly to prove herself. And now, as a successful businesswoman, she was finally being seen, not by her family, but by people who respected her and valued her expertise. As the months passed, Jessica's life continued to evolve in ways she never imagined. Her business was thriving, and she had even begun to expand into new territories. Her reputation as an expert in antique jewelry appraisal was cemented. She was receiving invitations to exclusive events, collaborating with designers, and even being featured in industry journals. She was finally living the life she had always dreamed of, one that was built entirely on her own terms. But despite the external success, Jessica couldn't help but reflect on the path that led her here. She spent nights at her desk, looking out at the city skyline, thinking about the years she had spent feeling invisible, being overlooked, and fighting for a place in her own family. Every achievement she had made, every milestone she reached, was a reminder of how far she had come, from the girl who used to quietly accept the backseat to her sister's life. And then, one quiet evening, Jessica's phone rang. It was a message from her grandmother, the one person who had always seen her. Her grandmother had been a steady presence in her life, always offering wisdom and encouragement when Jessica needed it most. "I'm proud of you, Jessica. You're the girl who always had more to give than the world saw, and now you're showing everyone what you're made of." Those words hit Jessica harder than she expected. They weren't just a reminder of how far she had come. They were a recognition of everything she had endured and overcome. Her grandmother had always seen the strength within her, even when she couldn't see it herself. And now, Jessica was beginning to understand that she had truly built something of her own, a legacy that wasn't defined by her family's expectations, but by her own hard work, courage, and resilience. Months passed, and Jessica's life continued to flourish. She had created a business empire. Her reputation was now solidified, and her success was beyond anything she could have ever imagined. As that young girl, silently striving for attention. But no matter how far she'd come, a part of her still felt the pull of her family, specifically, her mother and sister. There were moments when she thought about them, when their absence felt like a void she hadn't fully filled yet. As time passed, she started to realize that the hole they had left was not something she could continue to fill, not when it meant sacrificing her peace and her own happiness. One afternoon, as she sipped her coffee and scrolled through emails in her office, she noticed an old message from her mother. It had been months since they last spoke. Her mother had reached out a few times, trying to reestablish communication, but Jessica had kept her distance. Still, this message was different. It wasn't a simple, "How are you?" or "Can we talk?" It was a plea for reconciliation. "We miss you. Lily's been struggling. We need you more than ever." For a moment, Jessica felt her heart twist. Her mother's words sounded so familiar, so desperate. She knew the pattern all too well. A few months of silence, followed by a sudden request for help. They were asking, not out of love, but out of necessity. The guilt began to rise in her chest, and for the first time in a long while, Jessica felt herself wavering. But then she remembered everything she had worked for: the peace, the clarity, the freedom she had built. She couldn't go back to that life. Not again. In that moment, Jessica made her final decision. She picked up the phone, called her attorney, and instructed him to draft a formal letter to her family. She knew this would be the hardest step yet, the one that truly severed the emotional ties that had held her in place for so long. But as the letter was written, as she read through the words she had requested, Jessica felt a profound sense of peace wash over her. She wasn't walking away out of anger. She was walking away because she had finally understood the value of her own life, her own worth, and her right to choose her own path. She wasn't just breaking ties with her family. She was breaking free from a lifetime of emotional dependence and expectation. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to Jessica's story. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the most important thing we can do is choose ourselves, even when it means walking away from the people we've always tried to please. Life isn't about seeking validation from others. It's about staying true to who we are and never letting anyone dim our light. What's the lesson you've taken away from Jessica's journey? How do you feel after hearing this story? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more emotional, inspiring stories just like this one. Thank you for being part of this community, and I'll see you in the next one.